So the idea behind, I guess, why I assembled this gear was because I'm about to go on quite an extensive trip around
Where
Asia.
you headed?
Well, beginning with Dubai, a couple of weeks in India, then Singapore, possibly Australia and New Zealand. I usually find an excuse to go there. And then after that, Seoul, Hong Kong, Beijing, Tokyo, Shanghai might be in there as well.
Wow.
So it could be, quite extensive, and then who knows what opportunities are going to come up and for kind of another trip or to extend the trip on the other side of that. And when I think about how that fits into the year of travel, which involves the Web3 Summit and DevCon later in the year, which will put us, DevCon 4 being in Prague, that's right next to Eastern Europe. So may as well go through there, and then that just leaves South America. So it could well be that this is quite a stint of travel that we're about to embark on. Certainly myself, but I know you travel a lot as well.
And for people watching that want to come to those events, are any of the events already published on our website, or how would they find out where to meet you along this trip?
Well, there's DFINITY.org. If you go to community, there's a list of up and coming events. There'll be a whole bunch coming up over the next few days. Certainly India is going to be huge, but a lot of those aren't meetups. There's the International Blockchain Congress, where
I see.
DFINITY sponsoring the hackathon, and and then we've got Hashed in Seoul, who are also going to be in Beijing. We might work with them. We also might work with Wangcheng, who is a strategic partner in China. The sheer number of opportunities is totally endless. But right now with this particular setup, so this is actually trained. This camera is trained on you, as if I was to be interviewing you personally. And kind of the idea of the setup and what I've done in the past is predominantly made podcasts that are interview based. So as long as I've got you here, we may as well do a quick interview.
Go for it.
Okay, so how did you first find yourself involved in blockchain?
It was back in 2012. I was back then working at a company called SumUp in Berlin, which is kind of the European Square. It's a company that allows you to process credit card transactions from your phone. And one of my coworkers ended up later joining the Ethereum team and then DFINITY, Gustav. And he used my laptop to mine Bitcoins over lunch. And that's how I first heard of the decentralized world. I got interested, and we started talking about it and mining some stuff, and
No way.
that's how it all started.
And so you started mining Bitcoin?
Back then, yeah, but this was when you could still mine Bitcoin on your laptop.
Yeah, right.
So it's a long time ago.
It reminds me of mining Litecoin in 2013. I bought this massive rig to mine Litecoin.
Yeah.
And I mined like 20 Litecoin
Nice.
when it was 30 cents, and then of course it jumped to $50, and it was like, wow, I really could have changed the trajectory of my life if I just bought Litecoin instead of mining it.
Yeah.
That's pretty fascinating though. So that was way back in 2012. So what did you do in the intervening years?
So 2012, I was still working at this company, SumUp. 2013, I started investing. So from 2013 till 2016, I was mainly an investor in startups and board member. I was looking at a lot of blockchain companies the first couple of years, so like 2013, 2014, but couldn't really find any companies that I found investable at the time. So I ended up not spending too much time in the space. And then 2016 is when I got in touch with Gustav again and Dom, and we started to work on setting up the DFINITY Foundation, and ended up working for DFINITY full time.
So what is it about software engineering that you find interesting?
I think the creative problem solving aspect of it, because usually the specs mean you know where you are, usually that's like a blank slate or whatever existing code you're taking over, and the specs tell you where you have to go and how things have to work in the end. And then I find it a very creative process to go from A to B in between, and I like that challenging creative problem solving process along the way.
And do you find that rolls into your entrepreneurialism and investing or style of investing?
The way I invested after that was in companies where I felt they had good software engineers. And then for some companies, I mean, I officially had a board seat, but sometimes I would even help them like fix bugs on the website and stuff like that. So I was very hands-on. It was more like a business angel kind of style.
Okay. So you feel? So do you feel? Sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Your history as a software engineer and your background in computer science gave you the ability to better assess the teams behind the projects you were investing in?
I mean, it definitely helped me figure out if founders really understood what they were building. Because I believe that having a technical founder and a founder team increases the likelihood of the company succeeding if they're building a company in the tech space. So I think it gave me interview skills to find that out. And then B, I often helped them hire software developers. So I was usually one of the people interviewing candidates at the early stages. And that's where it definitely helped that I have built software products before.
Okay, so this follows into something really a really great question, I reckon, or something I'd really like to get an answer to. And that is, when you say that, do these founders really understand the products that they're building? What do you think about blockchain projects and the founders of various blockchain projects and the ease with which they get capital, right? I mean, you're this very critical investor, you know, probably a little bit harder to convince than the ICO investing public. And you're looking for competence and an understanding of the problem that is being addressed prior to investing. But the general public doesn't apply that same kind of scrutiny to blockchain projects. So it seems to me like, or it feels like, a lot of naively conceived projects are receiving a ton of funding, but the founders of these projects, or the seekers of this funding, don't really understand the problem that they're attempting to solve. I mean, is that a sentiment or a statement that you would agree with?
I think it's hard to make generalizations, but I think, just because it's been such a growing market, it's been easy to attract capital over the past, let's say, 18 to 24 months. I think that's something that makes DFINITY so valuable, is that we, instead of focusing on marketing, we focused on building out the right team and building the actual technology. And obviously Dom brought a lot of innovations to the space that I think are super valuable for our project. I think because we have blockchain, we're still at a space, or like at a place where everything seems kind of confusing and highly technical, right? Because there's no real applications yet. It's kind of like if I asked you, how do you send an email back in 1992 when there weren't any great email clients, and you had to explain to me how like emails are put into chunks of code, and then these kind of bytes and bits are being sent through a modem to the BGP and reassembled. I think we're kind of at that stage right now, and that's very hard for it's also very hard for me to understand if I just have like a short brief, right? I need to sit down and spend some time on a project. I think because of that, people often fall back to marketing and just talk about what eventually might be possible with that technology without talking about the technology. And so a lot of projects have raised money based on their marketing materials, not their technology. Which we'll see if it's good or bad, or how it's going to work out. But it's definitely, I think that the space will change rapidly over the next 2 to 5 years.
Okay, so that being said, what are the technological advancements that you see as differentiating DFINITY, personally? Or what in particular, if there was one thing in particular that kind of resonates with you, especially as an engineer, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, is there one particular thing, or how would you describe your reaction to DFINITY from those various perspectives?
Well, I think there's two key innovations that DFINITY makes. One is the consensus layer, where I think Dom's innovation is brilliant on how we achieve much quicker finality and shorter block time. And then second, I think what's very important is using WebAssembly on the application layer. So it will mean that we'll get access to a much larger crowd of developers, because web developers are already used to using WebAssembly, or are getting used to using WebAssembly right now. And it also means a certain portability between projects as more and more projects adopt WebAssembly as their standard.
Anything else you think we should cover, as long as we've got 5 cameras trained on us?
No, I think that's it. Well, one question for you. What do you think makes a great community event now that you're going to go and travel and put on so many events? Like, what's the key recipe for
A
the
great
event.
community?
Yeah.
Or to make a great community event?
Yes.
So the best thing about, or the best community events are always events that have been put on by people who are just purely passionate about the technology and invite their friends. Because there's nothing better than actually having a social aspect to it and working through some material as a group. So rather than just being a person who stands up and talks at a crowd, it's far better to be engaged in a conversation. It's good to be challenged. It's great to be asked questions that you can't answer, because that means you go back and you actually get to learn,
Yeah.
right?
You process and grow. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And just having a genuinely interested group of attendees and a genuinely interested community, obviously, is what makes a great community event. This trip through India is going to be spectacular, especially because we're visiting the IITs, the Indian Institutes of Technology.
Oh,
and
cool.
there's 23 of them. They're essentially the ultimate filter that reduces this huge population, many of whom are phenomenally brilliant. The Indian people have to focus on getting their education through these specific institutions, and there's only a very small handful. So it's the best of the best. It's so competitive, and the people who you meet at these
Events?
at the IITs are just absolutely incredible. And then you're in India as well, which is just, it's a world away from Palo Alto. I can tell you
That's
that.
true. Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
cool. Safe travels.
Yeah, likewise.
Good luck.
Thank
Have
you.
fun.
Awesome.